In 1350, Jehan Le Vignon lived in a village in France with his wife Richeux and 4 children. For 3 years, his family kept him from throwing himself into wells. He was suicidal and depressed. One Thursday during a public holiday, Jehan grabbed a stick and killed his wife Richeux. When the officers came, his children petitioned King Philip VI for a pardon, arguing Jehan's madness meant he could not be held responsible for the killing. The king agreed and Jehan went home. This really happened and it's documented in a royal pardon letter. It also tells us something modern culture gets almost entirely wrong about the medieval period. Chapter 1. How they understood mental illness. Medieval physicians inherited humoral medicine from Greek and Roman sources. The theory held that 4 fluids governed health: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Balance in these humors meant health, and imbalance produced illness, including mental disturbances. Let's go over some examples. Melancholia corresponded to excess black bile, characterized as cold and dry. Mania stemmed from yellow bile, hot and dry. Frenzy described acute crises of the humors, and fatuity referred to chronic conditions. This framework gave medieval doctors a logical system for understanding mental disturbance. If melancholia was caused by excess black bile, then treatments should counteract those properties. Treatments followed logically from humoral theory. Bloodletting aimed to drain excess humors. A change in diet countered imbalances. For example, melancholic patients received foods considered hot and moist to counteract the cold, dry properties of their condition. Physicians prescribed herbal remedies, baths, sweating, and hydrotherapy. For severe cases, some surgeons performed trepanation, which is basically drilling holes in skulls to release pressure. These procedures sound horrifying to modern ears, but archaeological evidence from skeletal remains shows that patients survived. Medieval surgeons were attempting genuine medical intervention, using the best understanding available to them. While Christian Europe built on the Roman and Greek medical systems, the Islamic world built more sophisticated systems. Avicenna, known as Ibn Sina, lived from 980 to 1037. He composed the canon of medicine. European universities taught from this text for 6 centuries. A differentiating example are his descriptions of how melancholia differs between early and chronic phases. His detailed observations showed that mental illness was not merely a spiritual problem, but was treated as a medical condition with recognizable patterns. We see further evidence of this when Granada opened a hospital dedicated entirely to mental illness in 1365, and another one in Valencia in 1409. Documents describe these institutions providing music therapy, occupational activities, and environments managed by trained physicians. Patients weren't kept indefinitely, as records of patient recovery speak of them being discharged back to their communities. Medieval physicians understood that environment and activity mattered for treatment. Chapter 2. How families protected their own. In 1324, England enacted the Prerogativa Regis. The law established crown responsibility for protecting those unable to manage their own affairs. The statute distinguished idiots, born with intellectual disability, from lunatics who developed mental illness after birth. The distinction mattered profoundly. Lunatics' property was held in trust during their illness. If they recovered, property was returned to them. The law recognized that mental illness could be temporary. This legal framework changed everything. The mad were not labeled as criminals or demons, but as people whose minds were temporarily unavailable, requiring protection and supervision. When competency questions arose, royal commissioners assembled juries from neighbors. The subject testified and their family presented evidence. In 1383, Emma de Beston stood before such a jury in England. Testimony from neighbors and family established she could not manage her affairs. The jury decided that Emma would be placed under her husband's legal guardianship, but remained in her community, in her home, with courts maintaining oversight to ensure her interests were protected. Her life continued within familiar surroundings with people she knew. In Alexandra Pfau's book, Medieval Communities and the Mad, an examination of 115 cases from French letters spanning from 1360 to 1500 reveals the systematic ways families protected mentally ill members. This is, by the way, where I got the story from Jehan from the beginning of this video. The letters reveal how medieval courts thought about these cases. Courts pardoned crimes committed during madness because law recognized that mental illness removed criminal intent. English legal doctrine stated explicitly that madmen committing crimes in their madness ought not by law to undergo the extreme penalty. French remission letters follow identical principles. Families emphasized their relatives' lack of agency during episodes, and communities testified to normal character outside illness periods. Courts granted pardons and returned individuals to family care. What's striking about these letters is how they constructed madness as fundamentally communal rather than individual. They situate mad individuals within households where care could be provided. Families described elaborate surveillance systems and detailed restraint methods when necessary. We also see evidence of communities contributing resources, chains for restraints, extra food for children if one of the parents could not provide, and so forth. The entire community understood that protecting the mad was collective work. If you want more medieval history that challenges what you think you know, hit subscribe. The algorithm won't show you the next video unless you tell it to. Chapter 3. When systems broke and how they rebuilt. Sometimes the weight of care overwhelmed individual families. In these moments, communities faced difficult choices about what to do. Records of these crises reveal both the failures of medieval care systems and the persistent commitment to integration. Gerard, a cleric described in medieval records, suffered madness after his stepmother poisoned his food. The account describes thrashing movements, incoherent screaming, and an inability to recognize familiar people. His monastic community initially struggled because his fellow monks found his behavior terrifying. They briefly expelled him from the monastery because his brothers considered him too dangerous to keep. After some time, though, they reconsidered and brought him back. They gave him some holy water, and Gerard recovered. He spoke coherently in multiple languages, and he vowed to make a pilgrimage in gratitude. The account reveals community decision-making processes. The expulsion was temporary, a clear moment of fear. Physical restraints were common in these situations. Families purchasing chains specifically for restraining relatives appears repeatedly in legal documents. These measures are described matter-of-factly, without moral judgment. The restraints served a protective function. Because no psychiatric medication existed, when individuals posed immediate danger to themselves or others, physical restraint remained the only available and reliable tool. English law was explicit. People who committed crimes while mad bore no criminal responsibility, but restraint prevented further harm while preserving the possibility of recovery and reintegration. Bethlehem Hospital in London, founded in 1247, became England's first institution dedicated to housing mentally ill people. By 1403, it specialized in care for the insane. Early 15th century reports describe inmates kept full honestly. The same sources note some to be restored onto their wit and health again. Bethlehem's later reputation as a place of horror emerged in subsequent centuries. The medieval form represented a genuine attempt at specialized care, even if that attempt ultimately failed to sustain humane conditions over time. But in the medieval period itself, institutions represented hope. They suggested that communities could create spaces specifically designed for the mentally ill, with trained staff and organized routines. Some communities experimented with pilgrimage as treatment. Families brought mentally ill relatives to saints' shrines seeking miraculous intervention. St. Dimphus Shrine in Geel, Belgium, became a pilgrimage center. When immediate recovery did not occur, townspeople took pilgrims into their homes. They integrated them into family life, providing lodging and work as ordinary community members. This practice evolved into a formal system persisting to this day. Modern psychiatric researchers study Geel as one of the world's most successful models for community integration of mentally ill individuals. As you might have guessed throughout the video, the system was profoundly unequal. Nobility received physician care. Clergy accessed monastic care systems. Peasants relied on family, pilgrimage, and prayer. If family support collapsed, peasants had nothing. Some became beggars or outcasts, and others wandered indefinitely. For them, medieval society offered no institutional safety net. Chapter 4. The Legacy They Built. Research across legal documents, historical records, and surviving accounts converges on several points. Medieval communities recognized mental illness as requiring care rather than punishment. They developed legal structures protecting vulnerable individuals. They created support networks centered on family responsibility with community participation. Some systems, particularly Geel's model, proved effective enough to function across centuries. Others failed. Institutions deteriorated into places of confinement and neglect. The treatments failed more often than they succeeded. Bloodletting didn't cure mania. Trepanation rarely helped madness. Pilgrimage didn't reliably produce miraculous healing. But the underlying framework endured. The conviction that mentally ill people deserved care, legal protection, and community integration, establishing foundations shaping subsequent psychiatric development. Medieval failures weren't the result of ignorance or cruelty, they were the result of genuine lack of effective tools. Yet even without these tools, medieval societies built systems to protect the vulnerable. When Jehan de Vignon's children brought their father home after he killed their mother, they participated in constructing a foundation that shapes modern mental health care. Their story, preserved in a royal pardon letter, reminds us that the struggle to provide dignified care for mentally ill people spans centuries. As always, thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. You can find my sources below, and see you in the next one.